On September 2019, Turkish President Erdogan said, "Some countries have missiles with nuclear warheads, but we can't have them. This I cannot accept." He went on to claim that there is no developed nation in the world that doesn't have them, and concluded with a comparison with Israel. Such statements could indicate Turkey does want to have nukes. But how realistic is such an assumption? And if Turkey does go after nukes, how long would it need to develop them? Turkey's pursuit of a nuclear bomb, when it happens, will be possible because of scientists working on nuclear fission decades ago. Most names are known, but through a Magellan TV documentary, I've learned of a new one. Lisa Meitner, the mother of the atom bomb, is a life story of a physicist who was quite instrumental in explaining the physics behind nuclear fission. I learned that Meitner helped Otto Hahn in his Nobel Prize-winning research on nuclear fission at the verge of World War II. Their work kickstarted the American research and later development of the bomb. It's also typical of the unique, high-quality programming you will find on Magellan TV, the sponsor of this video. Their service was founded by filmmakers who have been searching for the most interesting and expertly produced content from around the world. They add new content each week, with a growing number of shows available in 4K. The service is completely ad-free and very bingeable. Magellan TV is available on TVs, laptops or mobile devices, and Binkov's viewers will get a 1-month free trial. Go to magellantv.com/Binkov's Battlegrounds or simply click on the link in the description below to claim the trial. You're going to love it. Let's get back to Turkish nuclear program. Does it even exist? Officially, no. But aside from Erdogan, way back in 2006, there was a telling statement from then military chief of staff when he said, "The presence of countries which have nuclear weapons, from North Korea to the Middle East, is a serious threat for our country." He then added, "If proliferation of nuclear weapons cannot be resolved diplomatically, I see a strong likelihood that we will face some important decisions in the near future. Otherwise, we may lose our strategic superiority in the region." 13 years have passed, and bits of circumstantial evidence have been emerging since then. Turkey has embarked on a plan to operate nuclear power stations. The first one is currently being built, and there are plans for more power plants. Interestingly, each of them was to be sourced from a different country. The one being built is built by a Russian company with their technology. Another one, for which plans have stalled due to the excessive price tag, was to be built with Japanese tech. And for yet another one, the tech was to come from the US. With the current uneasy relationship between US and Turkey, it remains to be seen if said power plant is to actually proceed. Of course, civilian power plants are one thing, as they use nuclear fuel of low purity, while nuclear weapons require quite high purity levels. Some of the countries that do have nuclear weapons, like Israel or North Korea, do not operate nuclear power plants. They do, however, have nuclear reactors for research purposes and, crucially, for extracting plutonium. There were unsubstantiated allegations around 2015 made by various German newspapers that German intelligence concluded Turkey is pursuing nuclear weapons. Another piece of the puzzle is the Turkish ballistic missile program. Having nuclear weapons is only part of the nuclear capability. Delivering them is another. Using planes and even cruise missiles isn't necessarily efficient. Those are easier to shoot down than a long-range ballistic missile in time, which is why most countries prefer to use such high-speed delivery systems. Intriguingly, since 2012 or so, Turkey has been expanding its ballistic missile development. Turkey's Minister of Industry and Technology has since stated that developing long-range ballistic missiles was among Turkey's goals. The Turkish Undersecretary for Defense Industries then confirmed the existence of efforts to develop long-range ballistic missiles. TÜBİTAK Council officially announced the development of a missile with a range of 2,500 kilometers, though it wasn't specified if said missile was a ballistic one. The Turkish president back in 2015 also said this: "Currently we make missiles, but we are not at the desired level with respect to the range, which must be much longer. We want indigenous long-range offensive missiles." There are plenty of short-range ballistic missiles around the world. Going over 1,000 kilometers, however, is often not worth it for basic tasks. If the hit is not precise enough, a conventional warhead will not suffice to damage the target. For pinpoint precision, however, cruise missiles are preferred. The longer range ballistic missiles feature, the faster and higher they have to fly, and thus during re-entry don't enjoy quite the benefits of satellite navigation, as the signals are partly blocked by plasma created around the warhead on re-entry. Ballistic missiles can also get pretty expensive as they get larger, outstripping cruise missile costs per same range several times over. So if Turkey does ever develop long-range ballistic missiles, it may not make much military sense to have a conventional warhead on it. It might damage a sprawling factory, but would not be precise enough to hit entrances to facilities buried underground, for example. What routes would Turkey need to take to get a nuclear weapon? One would be to steal or buy one from the black market. But despite various novels and movies, there is no example to date that a nuclear device has ever been sold on the black market. Stolen ex-Soviet warheads are more of a myth than a real thing. In theory, Turkey could just steal the NATO warheads that exist on its soil. During the Cold War, US-made warheads were stored around Turkey. Today, one airbase is left where warheads still reside. Usage protocol requires both US and Turkey to consent to their use. Turkish planes and pilots may be tasked with using the bombs, if need be. Of course, one can imagine just what kind of a colossal political fallout would ensue if Turkey did try to, say, blockade the airbase and possibly try to arrest the US personnel present, helping guard the bombs. We would probably be talking not only about wide-reaching international sanctions, but about an actual punitive US military campaign against Turkey, until the warheads are returned. The likelihood of that route being taken is extremely small. Turkey would likely encounter much less geopolitical fallout if it went and developed the bomb by itself. Before we go into the politics of it all, let's ask this: just what would be needed to develop a bomb? One first needs fissile material for the bomb. That can come in two forms: uranium, which is naturally occurring and can be extracted from uranium ore, or plutonium, which is a byproduct of nuclear fission in a reactor. What are the differences? One of the better examples are the bombs detonated over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. One can see just how much more efficient plutonium is. Indeed, nowadays majority of nuclear weapons use plutonium, not uranium. The Plutonium Core is a technological and engineering hurdle. First, one needs to have a working reactor, which admittedly Turkey may have in the near future. But then Turkey would need to have free access to the reactor and its spent fuel. The spent fuel is then reprocessed at specialized plants and plutonium is extracted. The process itself isn't terribly demanding, but actually getting one's hands on spent nuclear fuel is difficult. All countries watch quite carefully where their spent fuel goes. Unless a country actually sells Turkey its spent fuel and does so under the table, of course, it's unlikely Turkey could get such fuel. Let's get back to that nuclear power plant that's being built in Turkey. It is to be operated on a rather unique principle. A Russian firm is to build, own and operate the whole power plant. It is to bring nuclear fuel into Turkey to be used in the plant and then move the spent fuel out of Turkey and sell electricity in the process. One can imagine that other power plants, especially if made by Western countries, would operate under similar arrangements. So, unless there are some secret deals between the Russian and Turkish governments, it's not likely Turkey could get its hands on plutonium. Of course, if there are such secret deals, Turkey might be able to simply purchase the spent fuel or even the plutonium outright. But no one really wants to be involved in such deals. Russia is still a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which forbids participation in such schemes. If it is hell-bent on getting plutonium, Turkey would likely need to first devise and construct its own nuclear reactor. That's a hard thing to do, as such technology is not freely shared around. Just to illustrate, India got its first reactor from Canada, North Korea from the Soviet Union, Pakistan got its from the US, Iran got theirs from the US pre-revolution, and Israel got theirs from France. Turkey could of course develop a crude one on their own. It could conceivably do so in 5 to 10 years, as other countries of similar economic and technological capability managed after World War II, but only if it invested a sizable chunk of its resources, making the project more expensive than paying for an already designed civilian-use power plant. And since that first domestic reactor would be fairly crude compared to today's commercial ones, a question would inevitably arise. Why would Turkey spend so much money to create an inefficient design? Electricity production answer doesn't make much economic sense. Thus, Turkey would basically be telegraphing their nuclear intentions to everyone. Making efficient reactors does take decades of trial and error, as one doesn't have free access to the innovations in that field. So what other option is out there for Turkey? It could make uranium-based bombs. For those, it would need uranium. Uranium ore needs to be extracted from mines. Turkey has indeed already mined uranium since the 1970s. When mined, uranium is extracted from the other minerals, filtered and dried. The uranium concentrate is then called yellow cake due to its color. All this is the easy part. The hard part is enriching that uranium. Nuclear reactors need a special isotope of uranium, U-235. Natural uranium is fairly poor with it, and a greater concentration is usually needed. After it's been enriched, it's in the form of a powder, from which fuel rods are eventually made. So they might have enough uranium to produce plutonium, if one has the tech to extract it from spent fuel. Without plutonium, further enrichment of uranium would be needed. Today, it's done by centrifuges. Lots and lots and lots of centrifuges. Spinning for a long time, using tons of electricity. Indeed, the heavy energy use is one of the reasons plutonium is preferred. To use uranium in a bomb, it needs to be enriched to over 80%, often over 90%. To put everything in a bit of context, 1 gigawatt reactor uses 27 tons of low-enriched uranium per year. If that uranium is instead enriched to weapons grade levels, it would suffice for 20 bombs. Not all centrifuges are the same, of course. Iranian first-generation centrifuges are not very efficient. 5,000 of them are needed to do the work of 20 high-tech centrifuges designed in Western Europe. Iran, for example, made its first centrifuge in late 1980s. It took them decades to improve the process and the design under sanctions. Of course, Turkey is not Iran, nor would it likely see such isolation from both the West and the East. It could likely have fairly modern centrifuges up and running in great numbers within a decade. Once the fuel is enriched, making the bomb itself is fairly easy in comparison. There are different types of assembly, and at least making the crude ones like those used in World War II would require mere months. Israel is alleged to have started getting its plutonium in 1965. By the end of the following year, it had the first bomb ready, and that was already a fairly advanced plutonium-based design. The issue with uranium-based nuke design, though, is that it produces larger and heavier devices for a given yield. Plutonium is better, but not great. What really helps miniaturize the warheads is either boosted fission or, better yet, thermonuclear device. Let's look at some of the bomb designs. The British made their own designs, for example, though partially based on US ones. As one can see, size got smaller over time, while the yield increased. Within a little under 15 years, the British went for Hiroshima-style design to a fairly advanced, compact and powerful bomb. The 1953 design is absolutely huge, too big for anything other than a bomber-sized plane. Too big for any sort of ballistic missile Turkey might make in the near future. The 1961 design is already quite compact. Most fighter jets of today could carry it, though it is still a bit heavy for small missiles and lacks a punch. 1966 design is quite efficient even by today's standards, and could fit in a cruise missile if needed. So how long would Turkey need to make a bomb by itself? In all likelihood, it would not be by itself. Pretty much all the countries that do have the bomb had outside help, even if it was given illicitly. Israel cooperated with the French, and to a lesser extent with the British. India, Pakistan and Northern Korea all got some basic knowledge from the West or the Soviet Union. Here are some rough timelines for each of them. As one can see, Pakistan spent roughly a decade in the laboratory stage and 15 years more to test a weapon of improved design. India was quicker, getting to a fission test in under a decade and eventually getting to thermonuclear technology. Israel is specific in the sense that no nuclear test was admitted or proven by other parties. The whole program was hidden, and Israel to this day does not officially comment on the question of whether it does or does not have nuclear weapons. A CIA report from '67 said Israel had materials to make a bomb within 8 weeks. Israel is also specific in the sense that their cooperation with France allegedly went so far that the French shared their own test data with them, which means Israelis did not have to test their own fission designs. Turkey is unlikely to get such cooperation with any one side though. unless we're talking about a completely different world order and a real Cold War going on. So comparisons with North Korea and Iran are more apt. Iran, of course, does not have a bomb yet. Getting the fuel and enriching the uranium, which Iran already succeeded at, is the hardest part. So it is quite possible Iran did not go for the nuclear test phase on purpose, possibly fearing political repercussions, and not because it lacked the knowledge to assemble at least some crude type of bomb. Of course, the level of sophistication may be key there. What would it be worth to Iran if it had World War II style of nukes? They're huge, weighing tons. Even their biggest ballistic missiles could not carry them to meaningful distances. At the same time, the moment Iran does go nuclear, it faces attack by other countries. So both Iran and Turkey might want to forego basic weapon designs and hide their programs until they reach either boosted fission or fusion designs. Something compact enough to be used on the ballistic missiles or fighter jets they might hope to produce. It is telling that North Korea chose the plutonium route, enabling them to use more efficient bomb designs. It is also evident the lack of Soviet cooperation after the Cold War slowed down Korean efforts. Still, even with a weak economy and limited access to modern technology, North Korea did go from enriching its own uranium to a fairly efficient weapon design in less than 15 years. It did help them that their ballistic missile program had been operating for decades, helped by the Soviets. So their missiles are more advanced and capable than what either Iran or Pakistan, for example, have. Turkey too might need a decade or more to produce intermediate-range missiles of sufficient carrying capacity. Then there is the issue of politics. Turkey is currently a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and another treaty which bans nuclear testing. Israel, Pakistan and India are not signatories to the NPT treaty. North Korea exited the treaty before its first test. Remaining within the treaty and doing stuff in secret is possible, of course. Israel did most of its development in secret, setting up fake firms, buying uranium through them, then getting some of it for itself. Turkey could use similar tactics, getting heavy water for secret reactors and missing parts for secretly built centrifuges. The International Atomic Energy Agency does supervise nuclear-related processes in Turkey and has been concluding for some time that all the potential materials for nuclear fuel are being handled properly for peacetime use and no materials are missing. That can, however, change in the future. We have an example from 2018, when Turkey revoked a license given to a US firm to mine their uranium. In theory, a Turkish firm mining at the same place might have an easier time hiding some of the mined uranium from the agency. To sum it up, Turkey has some components required to become a nuclear threat. It has access to uranium, it has enough of the technological base to construct some kind of enrichment plants. Indeed, Turkey was selling parts for Iranian-made uranium centrifuges at one point. It could try to covertly accumulate uranium, secretly building centrifuges, and then toil away slowly, possibly for years, until enough enriched uranium is ready. It would still need to secretly get its hands on used nuclear fuel to extract tritium and/or plutonium if it wants an efficient bomb. And do all that on a larger scale if it wants to build an arsenal in a reasonable number of decades. Of course, that's hard to do in secret. Getting access to spent nuclear fuel is also something that would likely require either gaining assistance from Russia or other operators of nuclear power plants, or by running its own nuclear reactor. The latter is not yet even planned, so it's not likely it will happen within a decade or so. The international community may get restless if Turkey goes in that direction. Turkey may deny access to the IAEA, but that would cause even more political repercussions. Eventually, if Turkey does want to go nuclear, it would most likely withdraw from international agreements, like North Korea did. All those events point towards a different geopolitical climate than one of today. While Turkey today is getting more chummy with Russia, it is still very much oriented towards Western economic markets. But if a new Cold War happens and a hard division happens between blocs, Turkey may have to choose sides. Or perhaps the US or EU would choose for it by going too far with sanctions against Turkey. Certainly, in a Cold War scenario, Turkey would have much greater freedom to pursue nuclear weapons development without oversight, or could even get direct technological transfer by any other country that already has nukes. It might take a decade for Turkey to get basic nukes in such a political climate. Or if it goes down the slow, painful route of secret self-development in small quantities, it might be 2 decades for basic nuke weapons, or even 3 decades for more advanced compact warheads. Its ballistic missile technology would likely advance during that period as well, so Turkey might actually be a nuclear threat. In the end, who knows who would have to watch out for Turkey? Future politics are hard to predict. Iran, Europe, Russia, Saudis or Israel might be targeted. Indeed, all the way back in 2008, Erdogan indicated his displeasure with Israel. The greater political ramifications of Turkey getting nukes would be unpredictable. It's possible it would start a chain reaction, with various other countries in the region starting nuke development. And suddenly the world might become a much more dangerous place. Oh, and before you go, think about subscribing if you like my content. If you want to be notified of my upcoming videos, subscribing is not enough. You also have to click that bell-shaped notification icon. And if you're viewing Binkov on a phone, notifications from YouTube also need to be turned on. Well, that's it for now. Salutations! And remember, Binkov may talk about hypothetical wars, but only real peace can bring us all together.